Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I give you a mid-November update on the plants I'm overwintering. So let's go. I've been bringing you along this season, as well as previous seasons, showing you my process for overwintering a lot of different plants. This year, I want to bring you along every 2 weeks and just give you an update on all the plants that I'm overwintering, how they're looking, and how I'm caring for each of them. My unheated garage is attached to my house, and out of the 5 walls, which includes the ceiling, 3 of the walls are interior walls, which means they're connected to a room in my house. And for that reason, my garage does not fully freeze during the winter months. It dips down to around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe a little bit lower, during the coldest parts of my winter, which typically fall in January and February. The outdoor temperature can drop down as low as negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit in my zone 5B climate here in New Hampshire. I like to keep the plants that I'm overwintering on this back wall because that's where it tends to be the warmest. This is the back part of my garage. I do use my garage during the winter months. The door opens and closes in order for the car to go out and come back in. So cold air definitely does come in here, but it doesn't go below freezing. Now I realize not everyone has an unheated garage, or they have a garage that's not attached to the house. But there are a lot of different places you can overwinter plants. It all comes down to experimenting and knowing your specific climate, as well as the plant that you're trying to overwinter. Some places can include a basement, a cellar, a greenhouse, a crawl space. There are a lot of different areas that you can experiment with. In fact, some people have shared with me that they have a cold room in their house that's not heated, and they've been able to overwinter plants and they're just fine. The big thing to know is the plant that you're trying to overwinter and what's the coldest temperature that that plant can take when it comes to overwintering it, but also what's the warmest temperature that that plant can take. In other words, a lot of these plants that I'm trying to overwinter are going to be dormant. I want them to go to sleep. I don't want to put any sort of grow lights on them, and I don't want them to wake up. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about each specific plant that you're trying to overwinter. And what are you trying to do with it? Do you want it to be a house plant and you want it to be awake? Or do you want the plant to basically be dormant and asleep? And then based on that, then you can figure out where you want to put that plant. Many of the plants that you see here are plants that I've experimented with, and I know that I can overwinter them because I've been able to do it before. But every year I also like to experiment and try a new plant or two and see if I can successfully overwinter it. Now you can see I have a lot of plants that I like to overwinter, and in fact, my rolling cart is not full. I still have more plants I need to add on here. But nevertheless, you don't need to overwinter plants on something like this. In fact, in previous years, I've overwintered plants just on a shelving unit. I basically am trying to take advantage of the vertical space that I have in my garage. And that way I can fill more plants on some sort of a vertical structure. Now I like to use these rolling carts because then I can easily roll the cart outside and then bring it back in. And there are a lot of different ways that you can accomplish that task. There's no one size fits all. I plan on making these videos every 2 weeks during the winter months to basically give you an update on how my plants are looking, and also as a gentle reminder that if you're overwintering plants, it's a great time for you to also check on your plants. Is it a lot of work to overwinter plants? It can be. But I also enjoy the process, and I know that I can get a lot of plants to come back year after year, which saves me money in the long run. I enjoy this process of keeping plants in a dormant state because personally I feel like it's a lot less work than bringing them all inside and treating them as houseplants. So what I plan to do every 2 weeks in these type of videos is I will pull out a variety of a plant. Even if I have a dozen of that type of plant, I'm just going to pull one out. I'll show you what I'm checking for. And if it needs water or if it needs to be cleaned up, we'll do that. And if I'm noticing any issues, we'll discuss those as well. The first plant we're going to start with is Fuchsia. And I have 2 of these. This will be my first year trying to overwinter the Fuchsia plant. The first thing I do with any of my plants is I look them over for insect pressure. If I see any sort of bugs on there, I want to treat them. I don't see any sort of insects on here, so I'm not too worried. The next thing I'm looking for is disease, if there's any sort of obvious disease going on my plant. I don't see any of that. I then like to remove any of the leaves that are at the bottom of my plant because the leaves can harbor disease. So I can take those, and I have a bucket nearby. I'm just going to be throwing these in that bucket. It's still very early in the season, and the leaves are nice and glossy green. I'm anticipating that all of the leaves should drop at some point. But for right now, the plant still looks pretty much awake, but it will fall asleep when it's ready to fall asleep. I also look at the soil for each of my plants. Now for fuchsia, I have 2 plants. One of the pots might be wetter than the other pot, so I take each pot individually and check them. I like to take my finger and put it in about 1 to 2 inches deep, because when you look at the top of the soil, yes, that's one indicator. It looks light brown in color. But when I put my finger in 1 to 2 inches deep, I can actually see that the soil feels pretty wet to me. So for that reason, I'm not going to be watering this anymore today. If I took my finger and I felt that it was dry, a couple of inches deep, then I would give this the smallest drink of water. And I like to keep a very small watering can in the garage. I want you to notice how small this part is as well. And the reason is I want to make sure that when I give my plants water, I'm giving them the smallest drink of water. I don't want to be giving them a lot of water because too much water can rot the plant out and it can die. As I was checking on the second fuchsia plant, I did notice that this one does feel dry. Again, I took my finger and I stuck it in the soil, and that's how I could tell. When it comes to watering, I don't want to get water on the leaves because that can introduce disease. So I want to come right in and just give it a very small drink of water. And that's a question that a lot of people are asking me. How much water do you give your plant? It's going to vary on the size of your pot. A smaller pot will need less water. A bigger pot will need more, but not that much more. Really, you're just trying to give your plant a little bit of a drink of water, and that's it. You want to keep the plant alive. You don't want it to dry out fully, but you should not be seeing a ton of water coming out from the bottom here. Another optional step that you can do, but you don't have to, is you can remove any flower buds as well as flowers from the plants that you're overwintering. I'm just going to leave that on there. I know that eventually that's going to drop. The next plant is Mandevilla, and I can tell it's a Mandevilla based on its habit. It's trying to climb almost like on a trellis. If it was a Dipladenia, it would be more of a compact habit and it would not be trying to climb. What I'm going to do at this point, because I didn't get to it before, is I'm just going to come in and I'm going to cut it back a little bit. I want to control this habit because it's going to be in my garage for a long time, and so there's no use in keeping all this extra growth on top. When it comes to how far back you want to cut it back, it's really up to you. It's a personal preference. I see that there's some new growth coming in the middle here, so I just want to tame the beast. I'm going to go ahead and just cut it back a little bit. And I don't have to be very particular about cutting it back to right above a set of leaves. At this point, it does not matter. This is something I could have done before, but like I said, I didn't get to it, so now is a good time for me to do this. Do I have to do this? I don't have to. I could just leave it as is, but I'd rather have it be a little more controlled. I'm noticing there's a piece on the bottom here that looks like it snapped off. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off. Eventually, the leaves will start to turn yellow and they'll start to drop. And the flower buds as well as the flowers will drop. So every 2 weeks, I'm just going to keep checking on my plant and cleaning it up as I see things falling off of it. I'm inspecting it. I don't see any other issues with it. I've cleaned up just a few leaves that were at the base here. I'm checking the soil. It does seem a little dry. I'm going to go ahead and give it a small drink of water. In my videos, I usually say check on your plants once a month, but this year I will be checking on them twice a month because I make videos on it and I want to make sure that you're checking your plants at least once a month just to be safe. I forgot to mention that the Mandevilla, as well as this plant here, which is Bird of Paradise, are plants that I successfully overwintered in my unheated garage last year. I'm inspecting the Bird of Paradise and it looks good. There really isn't any sort of cleanup I need to do on the top as well as the base of the plant. I'm checking the soil level and the plant can benefit from a little bit of water. And this is a larger pot, so I'm just going on the outside of it. And that's it. Seeing that we're having a number of days that are in the low 20-degree Fahrenheit range next week, these are still looking so pretty. These are the Dipladenias. I took a smaller one down just to show you. This was one that I was able to divide off of a larger plant last year. And notice the growth habit, it's not trying to vine, it's more of a shrub or a bush. But I brought this one down because I wanted to show you, if you look at the base here, it has a darker color soil to it, right away that told me that this plant does not need any additional water. So there's really no need for me to put my finger down and do the finger test on this plant because I can see that it's dark brown and this definitely doesn't need any additional moisture. Well, I said I'm not going to show every single plant, but there are certain situations that I think it's important for me to show you. So here's another Dipladenia, and this leaf right here is starting to turn yellow. So I might as well help the plant along and just remove that. By the way, Dipladenia has a white sap on it, so normally you want to wear gloves, especially if you're doing any sort of cutting or pruning on the plant. And as I see any petals or leaves that are falling off, like this here, I'm going to remove those. It's basically house cleanup or maintenance, similar to what you would do if you had a plant indoors as a house plant. I've never had an issue with an infestation of bugs when it comes to plants that are in my garage. But if you do, you want to make sure you treat it. And there are a lot of different ways you can treat pests that are on plants. Even though I checked the last Dipladenia for moisture, every single Dipladenia plant I have, I'll be doing the same thing. I'll be checking them for moisture because I don't want to assume all the Dipladenia plants are the same. I want to check them on an individual basis. And I can tell that this one actually would benefit from a tiny sip of water. I'll give a little bit on this side, but because it's a larger pot, I'm going to turn it around and give it a small drink of water on this side as well. And that's it. And I want you to see that there is water on the table. We are very sparingly watering our plants, and still they're giving off a little water that's draining from the bottom. But the goal is not to have it fully draining out of the bottom. If a small amount comes out, it's not the end of the world. And I have to say, just look how pretty that is. My goodness. Here we are, middle of November in New Hampshire, and I'm still enjoying this plant so much. Next we have Purple Heart, and you can see I have a whole bunch of these. This will be my first year trying to overwinter Purple Heart, as well as this plant over here, Diamond Frost Euphorbia. Both of these I got for free. These were from my sister-in-law. A lot of people treat this as a house plant. I don't want to bring these into the house. I'm not a big houseplant person. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. And I might change over the years, who knows? But right now, I'd rather just overwinter these in the garage. Last year, I tried to overwinter Tradescantia, which is part of the same family as Purple Heart. I was not successful. And I'm pretty sure it's because I overwatered them. So this year, I'm going to be a lot more diligent, a lot more careful. If I noticed any dead leaves or crispy leaves on here, I would be removing those. But I just checked on this plant a few weeks ago and I did that process. So overall, it looks really good. The soil looks pretty dark on the top, but I'm going to check it with my finger and I can tell that it still is fine. It does not need water, so I'm going to leave it alone. And now I'm going to check this one. I want to mention I put these in proven winter pots, but these are not proven winter plants. So I'm looking at the leaves here. These are crispy, so I can go ahead and just do a little cleanup and carefully remove some of the leaves. I'm also noticing this plant is not happy with me. It's basically trying to tell me I gave it too much water and that's how it's responding. So we are absolutely 100% not going to water this. You can see that the plant is pushing out some new growth. It's trying to recover from the shock. What I can do though is come in and just remove these sad looking leaves. Now, if you have Purple Heart as a houseplant, then you probably know how to take care of a Purple Heart. But the reason I'm showing all of this is this problem that we see here can be happening with any plant that you're trying to overwinter. So you want to listen to your plant and you want to back off on the water if it's telling you to back off. Or it might be saying it needs water, so you want to give it water. The key is knowing what to do. When I pick up this pot is super heavy. That tells me that this plant does not need water. So I am sorry, little Purple Heart plant. I will back off on the water because you're telling me to do that. And I will allow you to push on new growth. Many houseplants like this plant here are easy to propagate. This time of year, I'm still in crunch mode with cleaning up things in my yard, with overwintering. So I'm not too worried right now with trying to propagate plants. But eventually, yes, I would love to be able to propagate this plant because it's a pretty easy plant to propagate from what I've seen. Well, I feel so much better now that we've cleaned up this poor little Purple Heart. and I will listen to it and I will not give it any more water. But remember, that doesn't mean all of the Purple Heart plants that I have don't need water. I need to check each of them individually and listen to what they're trying to tell me. We have some diamond frost euphorbia, and I'm just noticing that there are some scraggly pieces that I can pull off of here that don't look very good. And so I'm just trying to clean it up at the base a little bit. Some of these plants that I'm showing you might be a hardy perennial where you live. So you don't have to go through this process. But where I live, these are definitely not a perennial. They're an annual. And the whole reason I'm trying to overwinter them is to save them so I can use them again next year without having to buy them. I had originally come in with a few of them and I cut them back pretty hard, but then a few of them I did not cut back very hard, and this was one of them. It was basically an experiment because I wanted to make sure I didn't kill the plant by cutting it back hard. But I wanted to show you this one because you can see that it has a lot of top growth on it, and probably in another few weeks I can come in and I can cut it back even more. Because ultimately, I want the plant to just stay alive and be dormant. I don't necessarily need it to be blooming. But since this plant is new to me, I didn't want to just go ahead and cut them all back hard, which is why I did an experiment and just cut back some of them hard and some of them I didn't. And that's as much as I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to continue monitoring it every 2 weeks because I assume more and more of these little pieces will dry up and fall off of the plant. I'm picking up the plant and I'm feeling the weight of the plant, and I feel like it's pretty heavy. It's not very heavy, but it's heavy enough that it does not need a drink of water. And definitely just barely at the top level when I feel it, it feels wet. And the old me would have said, no, this needs water because it's borderline, kind of sort of heavy, and I would have given it water. And then most likely the plant would have rotted out and died. So to be cautious, I'm not giving it water today. And I know that this plant will be okay if I don't water it. And here's a diamond frost euphorbia that I did cut back hard. And I want you to see that it is starting to bloom again. So it is putting on some buds, which doesn't necessarily matter this time of year. The key is, did it die when I cut it back hard? And no, it didn't. So I think that doing it either way works when you're trying to overwinter diamond frost euphorbia. You can cut it back hard, or you can just leave it the way it is. It might look a little sad if you cut it back hard, but it doesn't appear to be dead. If I had to pick between the two, I would say next year, maybe I won't cut it back as hard, and I'll just naturally let it die back a little bit. Or if I do cut it back, I'll cut it back, but not as hard as I cut it back this year. I'm just coming in at the bottom, and again, I'm just cleaning up any of the leaf litter, which is very minimal. The soil is pretty dark, and I can tell that this plant definitely does not need water. And that might have been another thing, was I might have given it too much water. So I'm going to pull back on it now and not give it any water. I have a whole bunch of mums that I'm overwintering in my garage. I have a lot of videos, again, that go over how to overwinter many of these plants, including mums. One of the biggest questions I get asked is, are mums a perennial? Most of them are. So check out the video linked below and it talks more about it. When it comes to this mum here, I had already come in and cut it back fairly hard. I want to go ahead and just cut it back more. I could leave all this top growth on here, but honestly, I'd rather just cut off the top growth and just leave this bottom growth. That's what I did last year. I just did it in increments over time. I didn't want the plant to go under a lot of shock up front, so I'm just taking my time with cutting it back. But now I feel comfortable cutting it back harder. And I've done it both ways. Some years I've left all the top growth on, and then in the spring I've come in and cut it back. Other years I've come in this time of year and cut it back hard. I personally don't feel like it makes a difference either way. Just do whatever you're comfortable with. I'm not looking to do a great job in cutting it back. I just want to cut it back enough so that this bottom foliage here can start to grow bigger right now, but then it will stop, and then in the spring it'll continue growing. And I figure by removing this top layer here, this dead material, I imagine it's better to open up the plant anyway, just for many reasons, for air circulation, and also so that the leaves that fall don't fall on top of here and cause any sort of disease. Another reason why I do like to cut it back this time of year is I feel like I can monitor the moisture level a little bit easier. If I have all that growth in the way, I can't really monitor the moisture level. And when I'm trying to water it, I feel like the water will definitely get on the leaves. But again, do what's best for you and what you feel most comfortable with. I'm just sharing my thought process on why I feel comfortable cutting it back at this point. And I feel like this particular mum has enough soil in the bottom here, so I'm not going to top dress it. But what I'm doing is I'm just pressing down on it because I noticed that it was starting to kind of lift out of its pot. And I just want to remove any sort of air gaps that might be in here. And that way, when I do water it, there aren't any air pockets in here. So now we can really see close up what the soil looks like. It looks light brown. I'm just going to take my finger and I'm going to feel a few inches down. And this could benefit from a tiny drink of water. So let's go ahead and give it some water. And when I lift it, it feels semi-heavy. It's not 100% super light. So the water I'm going to give it is very little. I'll say this a lot in my videos. It's better to give less than more. We don't want to overlove our plants because while they're dormant, they don't need that much loving. That much loving will kill the plant. And that's it. This is a perennial aster, and I might have let it dry out too much when it was outside. So we'll see if I'm able to get it to come back and overwinter. It looks like it does have one small sprig on it that's still green. But what I want to do now is go ahead and just cut it back hard. Where I live, perennial mums as well as perennial asters, it can be tricky if you buy them and get them in the ground in the fall time. Perennial mums as well as asters take a long time for their roots to establish. And if you have a shorter growing season, like I do here in New Hampshire, then there's a chance that the plant didn't have enough time for the roots to establish and that the plant might not overwinter in our cold, wet, harsh climate. If I had taken this perennial aster and got it in the ground early enough, it would have been much happier. And same with the mum. I didn't want to take a chance, so that's why I decided to try to overwinter it. And even if just one little sprig of the plant survives for me, I'll be happy. And like I said, I think I let it dry out too much while it was outside. I didn't cut back the few little sprigs that are remaining that are green. But what I did do was I just came in and I pressed down. Again, just to eliminate any air pockets that might have been in the soil. Because that's the way it goes with mums and asters when you buy them. A lot of times they're pot bound or whatever, and they start trying to come out of the pot. So I'm just pushing down and I'm feeling the soil, and definitely the soil is wet. So I will not give this any more water. Fingers crossed for you, my little aster plant. I feel like every plant I'm showing you has a different growth habit. So this mom had a whole bunch of dead growth on the top, but it also has pieces coming off of it that still look okay. So I hacked it back quite a bit, but I left some of the green pieces on here. What ends up happening though with mums a lot of times when you buy them is there's really one main big piece in the center, and that's right there. So could I come in and just cut all this off? I could, but it looked okay so far. And if I notice that it's dying back more, I can cut it back. The big thing you want is in the center here. You want the green growth on the bottom here. So I'm just explaining why I'm leaving it as is. And you'll notice that, see the soil level, it's dropped quite a bit. What I ended up doing rather than top dressing it with more soil was I just came in and again, I just pressed down. I'm trying to eliminate those air pockets. And that will be good for me for the winter months when it's time for me to come in, check the soil level, and water things in here. The pot seems a little light, not terribly, but a little light. The soil is light brown, and I can see that it could benefit from a little bit of water. I don't want to water right on top of the foliage in the center, just on the outside here, where I know the roots are anyway. I do love this watering can. It's nothing fancy, but I like the spout on it because it just doesn't put out too much water and I can control it better. I promised myself and you I wasn't going to show an example of every single mum, but I feel like every single mum has a different situation going on. This guy is absolutely dry. I can feel it by picking it up. It does not look good. It looks sad, and it will definitely benefit from me cutting it back. I think part of the reason why things were starting to dry out was I had all this top growth that I can't really easily monitor what's happening down below. Let me cut all of this back and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, I cut it back really hard, and as I was cutting it back, I was thinking about it more. I think when I bring a mum in to overwinter, I would rather just cut it back hard from day one. And my reasoning behind that is I can really monitor what's going on at the base, because after all, that's all we're trying to keep alive. We're trying to keep the roots alive, and we want that growth at the bottom to be alive. This whole top growth, we're not trying to support that. So what's the use of keeping it? If anything, it might cost us, like this might have costed me. I can't easily see what's going on in the center there. The only thing I can really do is just pick up the pot and tell that it feels light, but I can't even see the soil. So I don't think that this is dead. I can see that there's some growth at the base that looks okay, but if I'd waited a few more weeks, I might have lost the plant. So what I did was I came in and again, I pressed the soil down just to remove any air gaps that were there or air pockets. Let's go ahead and give this poor plant a little bit of water. And now I can easily get into little nooks and crannies, turn it around, and give it some water that it desperately needs. And what I'm anticipating happening is it's still going to have water come out of the bottom pretty quickly. So even though it needs water, I'm not going too heavy-handed on it because I will be checking it in another 2 weeks. Even if I was checking it in a month, I still would not be giving it a ton of water. And I'm picking it up and I can feel actually it's starting to feel heavy. And I think that's all I'm going to give it because we're going to check on it in 2 more weeks. But hopefully we saved this mom just in time. If this isn't a pretty sight, I don't know what is. I have a funny story about these succulents. I received these from my daughter. She had gotten them at college. I think it was 2 years ago now because I overwintered them last year. I don't even know what kind of succulent they are. I'm sure that they're probably houseplants. If you know, please let me know. Just drop it in the comments below. And that's a little baby that I can propagate. Basically, she gave me one, and then I've been able to propagate and create a lot more of these. I love the color. And last year I told myself I'd make a really pretty little succulent garden with these. I didn't get around to it. Instead, all I was doing was just propagating them and keeping them in little pots like this. So next year, I'll be making a little succulent garden because I just love the color. I think they're so pretty. And it started with one that she gave me. And I have to do something with these. But I keep them in my garage. They definitely don't need a lot of water, as most succulents don't. And I can tell based on the color of the soil and just by picking up this pot that these don't need any water. And of all of these, the only one that looks like maybe it could use some water is this one, based on the color of the soil. Notice this has a darker color soil. This is lighter color. That's not the only indicator. I'll take my finger and I'm just going to check the soil. And actually, it feels okay. I think probably in 2 weeks when I check on this plant, at that time it will need water. So we're going to leave it alone. You know how succulents are. It's better to let them dry out than to give them too much water. So be on the lookout next year when we do some sort of a fun project with these guys. I have 2 Martha Washington Regal geraniums, and the name of this one is Royalty White. I bought these on clearance 2 years ago. And 3 years ago, I tried to overwinter a Regal geranium bare root. I was not successful. That doesn't mean it's not possible, but I didn't want to try it again because these type of geraniums are very expensive. I bought both of the ones that I have on clearance, and I want them to keep going for me. I was, however, successful at overwintering these in a container pot, dormant in my garage. So that's how I'm going to be doing it again this year. So I'm just coming in and deadheading it, any spent blooms. I could come in and remove the blooms, or I could leave them. It doesn't really matter. Eventually, the plant will stop blooming for me. And also what will end up happening is these green leaves will all start to turn yellow and the leaves will drop. But I'm just doing normal, regular maintenance, deadheading, removing any leaves that don't look good. I'm checking for pests, any sort of disease, removing any leaves at the base of the plant. I'm lifting the pot. It feels actually pretty heavy, but not terribly heavy. And the plant could benefit from a small drink of water. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you've been successful with overwintering Regal geranium or Martha Washington geranium bare root. Because it could be that maybe I just tried only that one time and I did something wrong. You never know. Isn't this just a beautiful sight? Well, actually, some of you are maybe like, yeah, no, it's not a beautiful sight. These plants are invasive where I live, not a beautiful sight. However, here where I live in New Hampshire Zone 5B, they sell this plant in the garden centers every year as an annual because it is hardy down to Zone 7. I live in Zone 5B. Some people have had success with overwintering these on the south side of their house. However, a long time ago, I used to buy these plants every single year for my container pots. It got very expensive. So I think it was 3 years ago, I bought one plant and I was able to take cuttings, propagate it because it propagates very easily from cuttings. And not only that, you can also divide the plant once you have it established inside of a container pot. So basically at the end of every season, I can come in and I can start dividing this plant and creating more plants. I'm now at a point where there's 15 plants in here. And when I say 15 plants, technically you could divide each pot down even more. And I have 2 trays, so I have 30 pots of this Vinca plant. So this is called the variegated Vinca, and I can't remember if it's Vinca major or Vinca minor. I'm going to put it up on the screen. This is different than periwinkle, which is a ground cover that can be considered very invasive. So I took these out of all my container pots, hanging baskets, window boxes, and I just potted them up into these small little 3 or 4 inch square pots. They all feel very heavy because I just recently did this job. So I will come in, check each of them individually. If any of the leaves have fallen, I'll remove the leaf litter, which I know is going to be happening during the winter. And I'll also check each pot individually for water needs. And if they need water, I'll give them water. And if they don't need water, like this one here, I can tell by looking at the color of the soil as well as the fact that it's heavy, this does not need water. So I'm going to check each of these pots individually and see if they need water or if they need any leaves cleaned up. These guys came out of container pots as well. They look a little sad, they look a little mad, but I believe that they will bounce back just fine. They are a type of lysimachia. I believe they're hardy in my zone, but I just have been overwintering them in my garage. This will be my 3rd winter, maybe my 4th winter. They are a beautiful trailer inside of a container pot. The soil is very wet. I just potted these up because they were starting to dry out. So I wanted to make sure that I gave them a drink of water. They don't need anything. I'm just giving them a break. If I wanted to, I could come in and remove some of the dead leaves. But honestly, I think these plants just need to recover. And hopefully in 2 weeks, when I show you what they look like, they'll look a little bit better. Who does not love lavender? I love lavender. I started a bunch of lavender from seed, and I got a number of them out in my landscape, but then I also sold a bunch as part of my backyard plant nursery. This is what I have left over. I just made a video showing you a couple of different ways you can get your lavender to come back for you in case you lose it year after year and you're not sure why. I'll link that down below. Anyway, what I've been doing lately, and I still have many more I need to do this to, is I'm taking the lavender out of the pots that they were in. I'm root pruning them, meaning cutting off some of their roots, and then I'm putting them in soil. And the soil is 2 parts of potting mix. I'm using used potting mix, but I could also use new potting mix. And I'm mixing in with that 1 part of perlite, just so that the soil is very well draining. Lavender needs that in order to survive. You don't want it to be sitting in wet soil. But that's all I'm doing. I'm not coming in and pruning back my lavender or any of that. I just want them to take a break. They're going to be dormant in my garage for the winter. I did this last year with lavender and just overwintered it in my garage, and they came back just fine. And I just potted these up yesterday. The soil was a little on the wet side. Lavender does not like it wet, so I know that I'm not going to give it any water today. I would rather it be on the drier side, and then I'll check them again in 2 weeks. If they need the smallest drink of water, at that time, we'll give them water. But just know that this is just some of the lavender that I'm trying to overwinter this year. I have more that I need to pot up and put in this tray. This looks like lavender, but it's not. This is rosemary, and I started this from seed as well. I sold a whole bunch of it as part of my plant nursery. But I have this left over plus maybe a few more. So I did the same thing. I came in and potted them up into a larger pot with well-draining soil. I'm not going to give them any water today. Some of them look better than others. Some look a little scraggly. I don't want to cut them back just yet. I'm going to let them recover a little bit and push out, hopefully, a little bit of new growth at the base. And if they don't push out any new growth, that's totally fine. They'll do that in the springtime. And this was rosemary that I started from seed, but I am planning on taking cuttings so I can propagate more plants this way with both this plant as well as my lavender plants. This is a sweet potato vine, and it's called Marguerite. I bought it on clearance end of the season. I actually just potted it up yesterday, so I know it doesn't need water. But what I want to share about this plant is I thought it was dead. I thought it did not look good because honestly, I kind of forgot about it, and it even sat outside on some nights when it was really cold out. But there's a tuber underneath, and it was very good. It looked excellent. That's what happens with sweet potato vines is a lot of times you'll find a tuber. So I will be overwintering this sweet potato vine like this in a container pot. Could I take the tuber out and overwinter it bare root? Probably, but I would rather just do it this way because this will be my first time trying to overwinter a sweet potato vine. And here's another sweet potato vine that I also got on clearance. I think I paid like $1 for each of these. And boy, it looked so sad. I was sad. I thought I lost it. And when you look at the bottom, it doesn't look terrible. But the one thing I want to share is when I took it out of its container pot, the tuber that was at the bottom of it looked excellent. So I have full faith that I should be able to hopefully save this plant. So what I did was I just potted it back up and I did not give it any additional water because it's heavy and it doesn't need any more. These poor geraniums, my goodness, look how pretty that is. This is an ivy geranium that I bought on clearance 2 years ago. I successfully overwintered this in my garage last year. That's as far as it went. I never put this in a container pot, so it looks really, really sad. I cut it back yesterday, and I also cut this one back yesterday. I'm leaving the blooms on right now because I wanted to show you what they look like, but I could come in if I wanted to and remove them. When it comes to ivy geraniums, I've never tried to overwinter them bare root. I know I've had success with overwintering these in a container pot, dormant in my garage. All right, so we're going to do that again this year, but next year, these guys are going to go into a nice big pot so that we can actually enjoy them. And then this is, I'm almost positive, a pelargonium that we started from a cutting. And I never got it potted up either. So that's how pretty that one looks. Again, I could come in and cut the bloom off, and I will after I put these back. I just wanted to show you what they look like. So since this is such a small little sprig here, I want to just go ahead and overwinter it in a container pot. Also, it's good to show you that you can overwinter geraniums in a container pot, dormant in a cool space like a basement or a garage. You don't need grow lights. You don't need a sunny window. So that's also another reason why I'm going to leave this one as is. And I'll be showing you in a little bit the pelargoniums that I'm overwintering bare root, which are different than ivy geraniums. And this sad leaf, I'm going to keep it on there for right now, given the fact that there aren't a lot of leaves on here. But as soon as this starts to push out, hopefully some more growth at the base, at that point, I can go ahead and remove that. This is lemon coral sedum. I've been wanting to add this for a while to my landscape. Now, it is not a perennial here, it's an annual. I also bought this for $1 at the end of the season on clearance. What I plan to do with this is, I haven't done it yet, I want to pot it up in a bigger pot because you can see it's outgrowing its pot. So I will be doing that, and then I will be overwintering this in my garage as well. I have a couple of small little mums that I bought from Walmart. You can't go wrong for that price, and they have a really pretty color to them. So what I did was I cut them back pretty hard, and I can tell that this one here feels heavy, and if you look inside the pot there, you can see that the soil is dark. With this one here, this one feels light, and I can see inside the pot the soil is dry. I'm just going to come in quickly and clean off some of the dead leaves that are in here and give it a little drink of water. And when I fill the two pots, the one that was really wet still feels heavier than the pot that was dry. I'm not trying to make it equal. If anything, I feel like this one is still too wet. This one is perfect. So hopefully this one will dry out in 2 weeks a little bit more. This is Silver Dust Dusty Miller. I started this from seed a number of years ago, and then I overwintered it in my garage last year. So I know I can successfully overwinter Dusty Miller in the garage. The soil is light color, but let's check. And I can tell that the plant could benefit from a little bit of water. So I'm just going around and giving it a little drink of water. And when I lift the pot, it definitely feels heavier than before. And again, I'm not necessarily looking for a very, very heavy pot. I just want peace of mind knowing that I gave this plant what it needed, which was a small drink of water. I have 2 different varieties of supertunias that I'm trying to overwinter. Some of them are in these small little pots and some are in much bigger pots. I feel comfortable coming in and cutting this back because I can see it's pushing out new growth at the base. This will be my second attempt at trying to overwinter supertunias. The moral of the story, and trust me, I speak from experience, is if you give a plant too much water while it's in a dormant state, it can rot and it can die. So I'm going to be extra careful this year with my supertunias because I want to prove to myself that I can overwinter this plant in a dormant state without any grow lights and in a room like my unheated garage where it's not really getting much love. I'm just checking on it on a monthly basis and making sure I give it a small drink of water only if it needs it. Might as well cut this guy off too. I see that it's green, but really, do we need it? I don't think so. I'm lifting the pot and it does feel pretty heavy to me. And I'm checking the soil and I can see that actually it's not very dark brown, but it is still pretty brown. I am not going to give it any water. I don't want to take my chances with this guy. I do want to mention that some of them already started to get way too wet when they were outside and it had rained heavily. So there are no promises when it comes to my supertunias. This one here has some new growth right there. But when you look at the base, I'm not seeing any growth down there. So for that reason, I don't dare cut this back. Optimally, I want to see growth happening at the base. Then I would feel comfortable cutting it back more. But seeing that this is the only growth we have, I'm just leaving this plant as is. It is super heavy. And again, it's not because I overwatered it. Mother Nature overwatered it. So we're going to just let it dry out and hopefully recover. And the same is true with this one here. Mother Nature gave too much water. So at the base, I think that's a weed that we see at the base there, the green. There is a little bit of green at the top. I don't dare cut her back. I just want to leave her as is, and hopefully she will rebound in a few weeks. I'll keep you posted. And in hindsight, I should have brought these in before it rained super heavily because this one clearly got too much water and maybe it's already far gone and rotted for me. But that's why I like to have more than less plants. Big thing is I'm just trying to get one of each color to survive. So we'll see, but I'm guessing this one got way too much water. And here's another one. Again, with these little guys, they were out in the rain for a long time. However, interestingly enough, this one doesn't seem as heavy. It has a little bit of green on it and a little bit of green growth at the base. I'm not taking my chances. I'm not going to give it any water. So here's the larger supertunias that I had out in my landscape that I'm trying to overwinter. They are super heavy, so I'm not going to give them any water. I showed you in a previous video when I came in and I cut it back pretty hard. I'm not going to do anything else to it. All I'm doing is just removing any leaves that don't look good, but other than that, this plant really doesn't need anything else. I'm not even going to worry about if there's a branch here and there that doesn't look good on the plant. I just want to leave the plant alone and hopefully it puts on a little bit more in terms of leaves. But again, we just want the plant to stay alive and be dormant. So as long as I have some leaves on it that don't look dead, I'm happy. And I have 6 pots, 3 of them with pink colored flowers, 3 of them with the purple colored flowers. And here are the ones that have the purple colored flowers. Now these ones I cut back earlier. The pink ones were later. I think that's why we're seeing some new growth being pushed out at the base here. It's just that we opened this up early on, probably a week or 2 before the pink ones. I could come in and I could remove the flower. It really doesn't matter at this point. The big thing is, again, I'm just checking the soil. And for this one here, it does seem a little dry, even though the pot is heavy. But again, this is a very, very big pot. So it's natural that this pot will always feel pretty heavy. So I'm just putting my finger in and I'm checking the soil. I can tell that this is dry. It would benefit from a small drink of water. You might have noticed I haven't said anything about fertilizer. We definitely don't want to be fertilizing our plants right now. We don't want the plant to necessarily be putting out a whole bunch of new growth. Do we want it to look dead? No, I don't think so. But we also don't want it to be all full of green foliage and all full of flowers. That's not realistic for a plant that's trying to go dormant. When it's this large of a pot, I do like to go around and make sure I'm just giving it a small drink of water all around the pot. And the reason is the roots are all around the outside of the pot, not just in the center. This will be an experiment. These are Overwinterd begonias. I have tried to overwinter wax begonias before in my garage in a dormant state, and I was successful. I've never tried to overwinter Overwinterd begonias before. These are not tuberous begonias. I think they're an angel wing begonia. But regardless, they're very pretty. They had a red flower to them. So I would just want to experiment and see if I can do it. I just potted these up yesterday, so they're actually pretty wet. And for that reason, I'm not going to give them any additional water. You might be thinking, wow, they look really sad. They are very sad. But I feel pretty confident about these. They still have some growth on the bottom. So what I did was I just cut back the top part really hard because it looked bad. But as long as there's some growth on the bottom, that's all that matters. That's all you need. And most likely these will not need any additional water for a while. So fingers crossed. This will be a good experiment. This poor pathetic plant, okay, here's the story. I have to be honest. This is a white-colored sunpatiens. I dug it up from, basically it's an adopt-a-spot. It's a place that I've adopted, and it looked great when I dug it up, but then I just didn't get to potting it up. So it sat basically without soil, or just a very small amount of soil for probably, it's been 3 weeks now. I just potted it up yesterday, and I gave it water. We'll see. I basically just need to let it relax a little bit. I guess my point is, from the get-go, this plant does not look good, and it's because I did not put it in a container pot right away. So we'll have to see what ends up happening with it. It's not a true experiment because from day one, it did not look good. But if it does bounce back, then from there, we can start monitoring this plant a little bit more. It just needs a few weeks of rest. Poor little thing. I neglected it from day one. Oh well, it happens. Such is life. In all, I have 3 pots. This is one of 3. This was an elephant ear, and it still is an elephant ear. What I did was I cut back the foliage. In hindsight, I probably should have let it just die back naturally. So I have 3 pots. 2 of them I cut back the foliage. 1, the foliage is still on the plant. This is all an experiment for me because I'm new to elephant ear plants, and so we will see what happens. One thing I don't want to do is I don't want this to rot. So I don't want to give it too much water because I'm not trying to support anything up here. I'm trying to support the bulbs down in here. So what I plan to do is probably only give this a small drink of water once a month. And I'm feeling the soil, and it doesn't feel bone dry. It feels dry, but not bone dry. I just don't want to rot out the bulbs. So I'm actually just not going to touch it. I'm going to leave it as is, and we'll check back on them in 2 weeks. And in fact, when I go closer to the bulb itself, it feels wet there. So that tells me I'm not going to give it any additional water. The final thing I want to go over are my geraniums. These are zonal geraniums or pelargoniums. I have successfully overwintered these bare root for a number of years. These were just pulled out of their container pot yesterday. So for right now, they're in my garage because I'm basically allowing the leaves to die back. And then they'll make a mess. There'll be a crinkly mess. I'll come in once the leaves have died back more and they've turned brown and crispy, and I'll remove the leaves. I do want to show you how big this geranium is. This is a 2-year-old geranium. In other words, it's a geranium that I overwintered bare root last year. It looked so pretty in the container pot that it was in. So every year that you overwinter a pelargonium or a zonal geranium, however you overwinter it, bare root or in a container pot, it will get bigger and bigger for you. So I came in yesterday and I already removed any of the flowers, the flower buds, any of the crispy looking leaves. Could I come in right now and remove every single leaf just to make my life easier? I could, but honestly, I'm doing other projects in the garden right now that I'm allowing it to just naturally die back. And after about a week or so, I can come in and remove those crispy leaves. The roots on these pelargoniums are still very much hydrated because I just pulled them out of a container pot. So I don't need to hydrate the roots at all right now. But I want to show you something funny. So this big, huge geranium used to be this big last winter. And then I overwintered it, and after one season, that's how big it got. Now, granted, all the leaves have fallen off this one, but I'm trying to show you even the roots. The roots on this are much smaller, and the base of the plant is much smaller compared to this guy. So this is a 1-year-old geranium that I got for free, just like this one. I got that for free from my friend Linda. And anyway, my point in showing you all this is over time, your geranium will get that big every year that you overwinter it. Since these geraniums were pulled out about 2 or 3 weeks ago, what I like to do on a monthly basis is hydrate the roots of my bare root geraniums. Some people skip this step. I like to do it because I feel like it helps the geranium survive the long winters without any soil around the roots. I suggest you put it in your calendar to check on your bare root geraniums. That way you don't forget about them. You want to check each section, and if it's bendy or looks like it's rotten, you can go ahead and cut it down to the point where it looks okay. But I'm checking this, and as of right now, this looks okay to me. So I can go ahead and I'm going to just put the roots, not the whole plant, just the roots in water. And I have a nice large bowl here. The water is pretty much room temperature, I would say. It's not too cold, it's not too hot. And I just go through each of my geraniums, I check them over, and I already checked these over yesterday, and I cut back any pieces that looked soft or mushy. And otherwise, I think it looks okay. But there are some pieces like that one there. Maybe in another few weeks when I check on the plant, that might need to come off and I might need to cut it down here. But for right now, it looks okay. A few years ago, and I made a video showing it, I used to take a spray bottle and just mist the roots. I found that that worked as well. But in my opinion, I think giving the roots a deep soaking, a good drink, I feel is better for the plant. And I'll put a timer on. I want the roots to soak for at least 1, if not 2 hours, somewhere in that ballpark. Normally, I have all of my geraniums down in my basement. But because I'm allowing the larger geraniums that I just showed you to dry up a little bit, once those have dried up and their leaves have fallen off, at that point, all of these are going to go down to my basement because my garage is too cold for these. Where my garage drops down to 40 degrees Fahrenheit in January, I don't want these geraniums in my garage during that time. But right now, here we are in November, my garage is around 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So temporarily, these geraniums can stay in here. My friend Linda, she and her garden club members put geraniums, I think it's in the town, they have like an area that they take care of. And then at the end of the year, I reach out to her to see if they have any geraniums left over. And so that's where I was able to get all of these geraniums. In fact, I've mentioned it in previous videos that Facebook Marketplace is a great place to check, or even with family members, friends at the end of the season. Try to get your plants for free if you can. A lot of times people don't want to go through all this effort of babying and overwintering plants. But if you're like me, who doesn't love free plants? I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be diligent this winter about bringing you along and checking on these plants, showing you any issues I'm running into, and just showing you what the plants look like. Remember, the plants that you have might be different than the plants I have. You might live in a totally different climate. You might be overwintering your plants in a different area than where I'm overwintering mine. But nevertheless, the whole process of overwintering plants can be a lot of fun and can save a lot of money in the garden. In a separate video, we'll go through other things like my dahlia tubers or my canna lily, my calla lily bulbs, as well as my tuberous begonia rhizomes, basically things that I'm overwintering bare root. For today, I just wanted to focus on everything that's on the rolling cart, pretty much plants that are potted up that I'm overwintering, as well as those geraniums. If you're overwintering plants, let me know how it's going. Or if you're doing other projects in your yard, I love hearing about it. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.